Hello, welcome back to another episode of Somewhere Between a Film and TV podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Parra, and number one, thank you so much for listening and watching. Number two, if you could, down below, please like, comment, subscribe. What did you think of Highest to Lowest? I want to know, did you love it, did you hate it, or are you somewhere between on it? As for everyone else, remember, everything we review here will always have full spoilers, so if you haven't seen this yet, chances are you haven't, considering A24 and their streaming and Apple TV. I highly recommend you go and see this, because I'm going to get into some stuff, but before you leave, like, subscribe, make sure, because you want to talk about this, so do I. And Highest to Lowest, Spike Lee's new movie. Let's go ahead and get forward. Let's get into it. What is it about? When a powerful music mogul is targeted by a ransom plot, he is forced to fight for his family and legacy while jammed up in a life or death moral dilemma. Now, that's super non-specific for sure, especially as someone who's just saw the movie, like an hour ago, maybe? But I'm going to go ahead and get into my thoughts immediately, because like most Spike Lee movies, there's an undercurrent of deeper thematic things going on, but there's also a straightforward narrative for sure. And with this movie, overall, it's kind of funny how I would phrase this. I liked the first half, but I loved the second half. Overall, I think that the second half catapults this into being a great movie, so I would say I loved it. I would say I loved it because it's kind of interesting. The plot of the kidnapping is sort of only in the first half of the movie, and then it shifts into more of a character study about Denzel Washington's character. And that's where I think the movie, for me personally, really gets into a different gear for sure. And first off, let's start with the positives. I think that Spike Lee as a director has a directorial stamp that is not what I call unnoticeable. He definitely has all of his signature stuff in here. One thing I really want to touch on is this movie has a lot of technical aspects to it, and I want to get into what I think some of those things mean. There is this sort of energy in this movie that shifts and comes from, it's supposed to be frenetic, but I also feel like it comes from being frenetic in that there's a lot of continuity errors in it intentionally. There will be moments where someone will hug someone else, and then they show the hug again from a different angle. And then you're sort of kind of out of place where the intercut timing would be. I just saw a Martin Scorsese movie again a couple days ago, and he also really likes to do that. I remember that was really present in Wolf of Wall Street. And here, Spike Lee, totally different director, also likes to do that sort of energy as well, where it's more about the energy being present than an actual beginning to end scene in terms of how we feel while we're watching it. I think that Spike Lee is a director that really takes into account how the audience is going to feel while they're watching something. And so it was a motif that I found really interesting, because I thought it was due to the nature of conveying that sort of kinetic, frenetic energy that really, really comes into play later with a scene that I want to get into, where I thought this movie catapulted into a higher level, a higher gear for sure. And another thing that I was noticing that was a technical aspect of it, but I'm actually going to be honest with you. I'm going to get a negative out of the way right now. For the first half of the movie, I felt like the score was driving me a little crazy. I don't know why it was so present. I don't know why the horns were so blaring in the score, but it just kept happening. And there would be scenes where the energy would be really intense, but it sounded almost like it was coming out of a different movie, kind of. Like the energy of the music, the score, not the rap that's in this, but the actual score itself, especially in the initial first half of the movie, was kind of distracting and kind of weird. And then there's this energy of this movie. I keep saying that word, but there's this feeling that this movie almost shifts kind of into being good to being great. And I thought that was really kind of strange. I didn't know if that was purposeful, because how do you make a first half of a movie good and the second half of the movie great? But there felt to be a kind of weird disconnect where the movie decided to escalate itself to a higher level. And before I touch on what that is, another thing that I loved about this was Matthew Libatique, who just shot Caught Stealing, another New York-based movie, also shot this. And what I really liked is we were talking about the energy of the feeling that's supposed to be evoked whenever you're watching the movie's just surroundings. And one thing I really liked is whenever they show landmarks, or whenever they show landmarks in Denzel Washington's life in this movie, it'll add this grain, it'll add this idea that this is a remnant of something older. That is especially shown when they show these intercut clips of Yankee Stadium that intentionally look older. And I think it's supposed to be that your brain is connecting these two things as this kind of like, this is a landmark, this is an achievement, this is a New York staple. And so whenever you see these older pictures of Denzel Washington's character, it's him being on the Rolling Stone cover, it's these pictures of him with his kids or with his kid and his wife, that it has that same grain. And I think that that's a purposeful thing of your brain is kind of putting two and two together, right? That this is a more monumental thing, because part of the point of this movie that I want to get into now, that natural segue, is it's essentially about the Denzel Washington character and his disconnect with the music industry as of late, which is kind of funny because that's what I feel like the second half of the movie gets into more than the first half. And the first half is like the kidnapping part of it and that whole plot. But I feel like that almost gets out of the way so we can get into this part of it, which I thought was really interesting, because the entire point, highest to lowest, one thing I really like about this is, and this is intentional, casting A$AP Rocky as the fictional rapper Young Felon was an inspired choice because, number one, A$AP Rocky's a really good actor, actually. And two, he has been compared to Denzel Washington in the past, just physically, like features. No one's going to compare to him acting-wise. We all know that. That's just, that's him at the end of the day. And there's this line that does reference that he's like, you could be my dad for all I know, and he's like, I might be. And I think that's really interesting because I do think that's purposeful, that casting A$AP Rocky, he's someone that idolizes Denzel Washington. A lot of people do, but it almost kind of echoes this real life sentiment into the movie, but within the rap industry of A$AP Rocky's character in this Young Felon, because way earlier on in the movie, at the beginning, he is really focusing on the money aspect of it. And it's even shown that at the woman at the front, whenever he first walks in, he gives her 60 seconds of his time, and she's really good. But it's implied that he kind of disappears halfway through that, but she feels really good about herself, and it sort of ends there. But I think that was shown to show that he's a little lost in his mentality. He's a little lost in the sense of he focuses on the wrong thing right now. The entire first half of this movie is focused on the money at the end of it all. And how there's this threat of AI and AI music, and how there's like this superficiality to it. And AI is not necessarily one of the plot points of this movie, but I do think it was thrown in there in a couple of lines to sort of showcase that superficial nature that music and the music industry can tend to lean into sometimes, which ends up being the rhyme at the end of this when it comes to the final scene with A$AP Rocky and Denzel Washington's characters in the prison. But before we get to that, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because Denzel Washington's character at the beginning of this, they say, or Son says, that he has no heart, or he has like a cold sensibility about him, and that he's got the best ears in the business but no soul, essentially, is kind of what he's saying. And at the beginning of this movie, this is the more interesting part of this to me, honestly, is Denzel Washington's kind of character arc in this, because the kidnapping after a while kind of takes a back seat, because I had to pause it really quick, and noticed that the kidnapping plot was already over like halfway through the movie. So it's kind of like, okay, if that part's done already, then where are we headed exactly? And for me, the second half ends up being the more interesting, intense part of the entire thing. Once there's this sequence that's brilliant that I'm going to touch on now that I was hinting at earlier, with a subway train, a Puerto Rican parade, and this entire group of people going to the Yankees game, I think is really well done, because they're trying to meet and they're trying to get the money between these two people. Obviously, we don't know who it is at the time, but it goes from Denzel Washington on the train to ASAP Rocky's character at the end of the day, but we don't know who's on that moped at that time. And the entire sequence is really well done. This isn't an action movie or anything, but like the tense nature of it all. And it feels almost like it's kind of like guerrilla style shot. Like he's moving through this crowd and the crowd's all natural. And the idea that they hate Boston so much that they yell at the camera was really funny for me. And getting him from point A to point B was really cool. And I really thought it was well done in terms of just the tense nature of all of it. But when it comes to that, I felt like the energy of the film itself almost kind of shifted completely. Because once it gets to the first time that ASAP Rocky's character and Denzel Washington's character meet, it's really tense and really well done. And it's almost sort of like this exchange of a rap battle of sorts, and they even say that, but there's this really natural flow to all of the dialogue here that feels really lyrical. I love how the dialogue is written in this movie, and it comes to a head in that scene, which I thought was really well played out. And leads up to something later that I think ends up underscoring the entire point of this movie. And it's once they finally arrest ASAP Rocky's character, and this is part of like why I was like, okay, I want to do this review, is for this scene alone, was Denzel Washington's character is repeated throughout the movie as having the best ears in the business, that he has this sense that no one else has. And it was really well written and really smart to me earlier on when he recognizes the song that's playing in the playlist that's sent to him by his son as these like up and coming people that he needs to listen to. And he recognizes the voice even through the lyrics, and he says, no, I've sensed the desperation that's in that. I can hear it, I can feel it. And that attention to detail, that idea that he could piece together that through that methodology, was like where I fell in love with this movie, because I thought that was a really clever and smart bit of writing. As someone who loves music myself, I love music so much. I think it can mean so much, and I love how it's utilized in movies and what it can mean in terms of people putting themselves into just art, generally speaking, movies, music, books, all of those things. So once you finally understand the drive that ASAP Rocky's character had in the past, where Denzel Washington goes to his place and he talks to his significant other, they call his girlfriend, right? And she's like kind of recounting this idea that he used to have hope, that he used to have just that one thing going for him, but he's starting to lose it. And you can sense that there is a drive there. There is a passion, because you can hear in the music. And then later on, whenever he's listening to it, when he's walking through the bridge and it's clicking with him, and he's like, you can tell that he's really feeling it. He's loving it. And then later on, once they're like, hey, the only thing he wanted to do was meet with you before he goes to jail for that long without any plea. And earlier on in the movie, Denzel Washington's character is established as saying that attention is the greatest form of currency currently. And that he's kind of, they've been kind of calling him washed up, or the record label has, that it's not been really, since 2004 is what they say, like a top 4 of the 10 in the Billboard charts were there. And it ends up being this thing where he meets with A$AP Rocky towards the end of the movie. And it takes Spike Lee's signature shot, his dolly zoom, where he'll put someone on there and then he'll move, and it's like this kind of unnatural, fantastical feeling that's supposed to be evoked. I remember it being really well done. Black Klansman, he does it in every single movie, but I love that one a lot. And here, he does it while Denzel Washington's kind of... It's implied that he's listening to the song again, right? This is kind of a non sequitur. It turns into a music video of a sort for A$AP Rocky's character, Young Felon, this kind of like showboat, grandiose sort of feeling to his music. And then it escalates, changes into a split screen where Denzel Washington is on one side and then A$AP Rocky's on the other, kind of performing, doing his whole persona that he has as this rapper. And then I like how it kind of almost match cuts into the next scene where they're split through the jail window talking on the other side, and it repeats a thing that Denzel Washington said earlier where A$AP Rocky's like, I don't know why you want to just focus on the music, you're gonna go broke doing that. And then he's like, attention is the number one piece of monetary value. It's the line that's repeated earlier on, that said at the beginning, and then it's repeated at the end. And it shows the kind of showcase of the entire premise of the movie, highest to lowest, where he says that I wanted to be at my highest, you're at your lowest, something to that effect. And then I thought that was brilliant. Honestly, the movie could have ended right there and the point would have been made, and he's kind of like, I'm sorry, but the music's not for me. Maybe it would have been before the entire thing that had happened, which I found really interesting because he turned all these people down, right? But Young Felon ended up like wanting to capitalize on the attention that he got in the first place, sort of playing into the whole, oh, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything wrong piece of it. And I thought that was really brilliant and a just really solid, well done writing. And then they finally tie back to, and I was wondering if they were going to do this because I was like, oh man, I hope that they do, because I thought the movie could have ended there, but I liked the performance at the end by the artist that his son recommends, that the song is called Highest to Lowest, and it's really well done. It's beautiful. It's sang really well. While the previous one was rap and it had this kind of like trap beat behind it, this one is a bit more of an older kind of piano backed song, and he recognizes the talent there, but he's asking, are you prepared for all of the stuff that comes with this, all of the things that, like, all the hard times, all the good times, all of the memes that come from being an artist like this? And then it ends up just being underscored there and ending at that point, and I love that about it. I ended up loving this movie specifically because of like the final second half of it, where it focused more on the motivation and the drive of why all these characters were where they were in the first half. And it's kind of funny because what ended up being the sort of less interesting aspect of it was them resolving the whole kidnapping part of it. And if I were to get into any negatives, I kind of feel like the first half, while it's really good, isn't as strong as the second half. And almost kind of, once you find out what the second half is, at least for me personally, where it sort of pivots into being a character study, I'm like, oh man, we should have gotten to this a little bit earlier. And I did think all the kidnap stuff was really interesting. I thought the moral aspects of it were really well done, just in terms of, he kind of ends up having this moral debate, like the description said, where it's like, okay, well, what do you do if your best friend is Jeffrey Wright's character, who's really good in this, is his son ends up being switched and kidnapped? And I thought that was interesting. And they do discuss it for a while, but it ends up not being really the focus of the movie. So it's kind of interesting to me that this ended up sort of feeling like two separate things going on simultaneously. And I liked one of them a lot, but I loved the second half of it. But that's what I took away from this at the end of the day, was the second half. And I ended up really liking this one scene where A$AP Rocky's kind of trying to die when they're on the train, he's like, just let me go. He's like, don't hold on to me. I don't want to live. And that sort of slip of his character's persona, like the facade, I thought was really interesting. But one more thing I want to touch on is I thought that the performances were, of course, incredible. I thought Jeffrey Wright was amazing in this. He's got like the coolest voice ever, so I mean, his performance instantly has this like gravitas to it. And I know that saying Denzel Washington is amazing and something is a given, but he's really, really good in it. And I think that he ends up being a standout. I mean, he's the best part of it. Of course he is. He's got this charisma for days, and it's like anchored in this weight of his eyes and his demeanor in this. There's so much. He always carries himself like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders, especially in this. And he has this ability to be really menacing sometimes, where he'll kind of like laugh, and you can see this thing click in his eyes. I remember that being a thing in Training Day, I think, as well, that he does. But one other person I want to say that's amazing in this is A$AP Rocky, because I remember him being in Dope, I think, and he was really good in that. But he's a great actor. He can give a really good performance, and I liked him a lot in this, especially with going up against Denzel Washington, which is, that's not easy to do. And I thought it was funny that they marketed Ice Spice as being in this movie quite a bit. She is in one scene, and she is in like 20 seconds total, and then she is never seen again. I thought she was going to be whenever they set up at the beginning, I thought she'd be like there at the end, but no, that was not her. She was just randomly in it for a little bit, but I guess she wasn't bad in it for the couple of seconds she was in. But overall, yeah, the negatives are what they are. The score I thought was kind of distracting for a while, and while it's not a negative overall, the second half is incredible and the first half is just good, which is like fine, I suppose. I would watch this again. Either way, though, what did you guys think of highest to lowest? I thought this movie was really well done. I thought it was really interesting as well. And honestly, I ended up loving it for its discussion of how Denzel Washington's character sort of pivots back into being a music lover. I love that scene where it just the music video stuff and how it's segmented is incredible. It's really well done stuff. Overall, I'm going to give this a score of a 4 out of 5. I thought this was really well done and really cool and stylish, and the dialogue was very lyrical, honestly. I loved how it sounded. I loved really everything about it. But again, what did you guys think of highest to lowest? And if you got through this whole thing, watch this. It's on Apple TV. It should have been a full theatrical release at Spike Lee. Also, did they market this? No, not really. But yeah, please watch it. I thought it was really good and really well worth your time. I want to apologize about the Conjuring review. Currently have issues with my car. I'm going to try to get your review out for that. I want to talk about it because I love the first two. Third one's okay. And I want to see what all the hype is. I mean, I've heard it's mixed things about it, but still. But after that, 2 other things this upcoming week. The Long Walk, which looks really, really good, and I'm really excited for it. I love Stephen King stuff. And beyond excited for this, Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, I believe. The first of 3 parts of the trilogy of the ending of Demon Slayer. I will be getting those 2 reviews out for you. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait. Anyway, again, one more time, please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys so much. And as always, I'll see you next time.